Hi class. Today we'll be talking about ethics in marketing. Marketing and advertising are essential part of the modern economy, but oftentimes there are issues raised whether a marketing action is ethical or not. So we came with our main question. How do we decide whether a form of advertisement or marketing is ethically acceptable or not? To answer this, we will apply different ethical frameworks and concepts, look at different subtopics that are vulnerable to ethical controversy, and analyze individual case studies. So we came up with our ethical frameworks to apply. The first of which is Kant, and he emphasized that motives determine whether an action is moral or not. So what can be some of the negative motives of marketers? Are they taking advantage of and deceiving people, or psychologically manipulating them to buy what they do not need? And in terms of duty, are the marketers acting from moral duty to do the right thing? And are they fulfilling their duty to provide truthful information for consumers and not to use them as a means to an end, but an end itself? And in terms of utilitarianism, which focuses on consequences and outcomes, the main question will be, does marketers maximize utility? And does it contribute to the efficiency of meeting interests of buyers and sellers and increase overall happiness in the end? So the third framework is Aristotle, and he focused on developing virtue of character and different types of justice. And in terms of compensatory justice, advertisements should not corrode moral character of the consumers. And it also emphasized that whether an action is ethically right or wrong depends on situations, rather than simply following the law. So another factor to consider can be whether it makes a difference when a marketing action is voluntary or not. And lastly, we have Confucius. He emphasized humanity, self-development, and his golden rule that focuses on interactive relations with others. So will marketers want to show the advertisement to their family and friends? And do marketers have high obligation to others due to wide target audience and high influence power? And so we came up with 3 ethical concepts to consider when advertising. The first one is honesty. So it emphasizes marketing as truthful representation of products and services, and can properly be allowed to the extent that it does not amount to misrepresentation. Okay, so the second part is responsibility. So whose responsibility is it when an advertisement is considered as deceptive or unethical? We know that buyers have good economic reasons to become informed to protect themselves, and sellers to provide information to attract the buyers. But this is not always as clear as it seems, because for consumers' point, could an ordinary reasonable person foresee the danger of deceptive marketing? And on the seller's point of view, do they even have responsibility of the metaphorical claims they make other than factual statements? Lastly, we have well-being. It's the consideration in social impacts of advertisements of products. And marketers take reasonable steps to minimize the negative social impacts. And people have rights to make autonomous choice and to act rationally and to be protected from manipulation and irrational persuasion. Let's now move on to some marketing strategies and ethical implications that follow there from greenwashing, advertisement for social cause, and marketing to children.
What is greenwashing? Greenwashing is the practice of making an unsubstantiated or misleading claim, stressing the environmental benefits of a particular product, service, technology, or company practice. A hotel that calls itself green because it allows guests to reuse towels. A bank that's green because you can conduct your finances online. A grocery store that's green because they'll take back your plastic grocery bags. It may seem like these companies are making an impact to the environment, however, the opposite is true. As the demand for environmental friendly products continues to increase, more and more companies will want to capitalize on this new segment of the market. Yet, with this increase comes the potential for abuse, preeminently in the form of consumer deception.
Hello, my name is Sarah and I will facilitate the case study discussion on Fiji water. There will be two parts to this case study. First is mislabeling a product and second is misportrayal of a company. So let's dive into the first part of the case study, mislabeling. In 2007, Fiji Water began advertising itself as an environmentally conscious business that aspired to manufacture a carbon negative product. They labeled their product as being carbon negative, as shown in the picture. This is extremely misleading. In order to achieve a carbon negative product, the production and sale of Fiji water would have to result in a net reduction of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. When Fiji Water stated to offset 120% of their CO2 emissions, it did not mean that the offsets had to be currently occurring. It could just simply be anticipated action so Fiji doesn't actually remove more CO2 than they produce. They just take credit for carbon removal that may or may not take place up to several decades in the future. Fiji Water distorted its environmental record to push sales of overpriced bottled water. They are using their own made labels to deceive consumers. Fiji Water is misleading consumers that drinking Fiji Water helps the environment, when in reality, the opposite is true. As a consumer, the last thing you want to do is spend money on a product or service you believe is doing right for the environment, but in reality is not. So class, do you think that Fiji Water's labeling is ethical? Before we move on to the second part of the case study, let's take a look at one of Fiji Water's advertisements. Hi, I hope you all have enjoyed the video. Now, let's dive into the second part of the case study, misportrayal. To give it some background, Fiji Water Foundation has created many social and economic sustainability projects such as creating jobs for local communities, protecting watersheds, providing education, providing healthcare, and providing clean water. These are all wonderful things. I think you will agree with me on that. However, the problem is with their environmental claims. Fiji Water claims to be environmentally friendly and, as we have discussed earlier, a carbon negative product, the first brand of water to make this claim. However, with research, it was found out that their bottles are made in a China diesel-fueled factory, which is not environmentally friendly at all. Also, with the unique rectangular shape of Fiji water bottles, they are actually made out of more plastic. Not to mention, their production and transportation causes a lot of environmental pollution. Yes, they may be doing good things, but their core product is not sustainable. Again, Fiji Water is misleading consumers to think that drinking Fiji water helps the environment, when in reality the opposite is true, by depicting words such as untouched in their advertisements. Fiji Water paints a beautiful green pictures to hide the bad things that they are doing in the production lines. Fiji Water only showed certain aspects of being green while excluding environmentally harmful facts about them. The consumer fails to receive the benefit of the bargain by not getting the green product that they expected. So, what do you think? Is it ethical to highlight their good practices to consumers while playing down their bad practices? From this case study, we can see that it is very easy to deceive people that a brand is green when they are actually not. How do you feel? Do you think it is ethical to greenwash? Or do you think it is just a successful marketing stint and there is nothing wrong with it? Do let us know your views. Thank you!
So, as our classmates had already explained in an earlier presentation, the understanding and the definition of the notion of CSR has changed over time. So while the economic, the legal, and the ethical expectations towards these organizations have varied, it is almost certain to say that societies across centuries have at least had some level of expectations that organizations would act responsibly. These expectations cause that companies are getting interested to engage in different forms of activity which can be labeled as CSR. One of these things could be to switch to a more environmentally friendly production process. By doing so, a firm would gain access to new markets for the green products, and it can differentiate themselves from dirtier competitors who are not engaged in these environmentally friendly production processes. Whilst at the same time, they can improve their resource efficiencies and reduce costly waste. Moreover, an improved environmental image can also help firms to gain credibility and help firms attract capital. Unfortunately, however, as my colleague just pointed out, is that given the economic surroundings of short-term profit maximization, we feel that companies may be motivated to promise consumers these green products for a better image, but then at the same time deliver goods and services in the cheapest possible way, despite the actual environmental impact. So we are very interested to know your thoughts as to whether you agree with the stance that greenwashing can be seen as a manifestation of CSR.
As mentioned by Sarah earlier, Fiji Water shows an example of greenwashing. Is greenwashing ethical? First, we'll help to by seeing Kantian theory. Under Kantian, people shouldn't be used as a means to an end. And in greenwashing, there is an element of deception. By creating the perception that the organization's product, games, or policy is more environmentally friendly than they are, we are conducting deception. And if greenwashing is universalized, consumers will lose trust towards any company that promotes their CSR engagement. Thus, this is not sustainable in the long run. And greenwashing occurs for a number of reasons, but most importantly, there are economic reasons. We should not use environment as a means to benefit or to maximize profit for the shareholders. Thus, Kantian will most likely say that this is unethical. Next, we'll look at utilitarian. According to utilitarian, ethically right acts are those that produce the greatest good and happiness for the greatest amount of people. It might seem that greenwashing can result in greater happiness. Greenwashing can provide benefit for the consumer in the sense that they make them feel like they're doing a part as a green citizen. But one might think that it's not that right in that way. Most biggest greenwasher are the biggest polluters in this world. Greenwashing companies or organizations can rest their good reputation to some extent, and some may actually enjoy leniency from regulations, media, and public, thinking that they are not committing to these crimes. And we'll go into Morton Friedman. Will he think that this is ethical? According to him, a company's key objective is to maximize profit as long as it stays within the rules of the games. In this case, greenwashing can improve the company's bottom line and is not unethical. So Friedman might feel that greenwashing is actually ethical. So what do our group feel? According to the 3 ethical concepts that we deem is important, we think that this greenwashing has an element of deception, and it portrays an untruthful representation of the company, and this is for their personal gains. Thus, we feel that greenwashing in general is unethical.
So many people complain about advertisements as a sort of obnoxious way for companies to invade in our everyday lives and cram their products down their throats. But I leave it up to you to agree with that stance or not. But that's not all what advertisements are good for. I will now address an effective advertisement strategies for social issue campaigns that let their voices be heard. So social advertising can be defined as the media practice whereby classic formats of commercial advertising are used to raise public awareness about social issues, encouraging or discouraging associated attitudes and behaviors, as well as serving to raise funds in favor of the organizations promoting such advertising. A well-made advertisement is designed to grab your attention and to remain in your memory long after you've left it behind. And that is exactly what many of these social causes need. Getting people to think and worry about various social and environmental issues, or even just simply getting them to be aware of them, is important for raising public supporting and affecting meaningful changes. Imagery is central to humanitarian campaigns, in part because of the power of a well-constructed photo. So in terms of social advertising, one can address environmental issues and social issues, but given that we've just discussed greenwashing, we thought it was more interesting to now go into the more social aspect in terms of humanitarian campaigns. However, if you're interested in the topic, I suggest you to have a look at, for example, advertising campaigns of the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, or Greenpeace. And feel free to start a discussion on that also. So, imagery is central to humanitarian campaigns, in part because of the power of a well-constructed photo. Marketing studies have established that imageable materials enjoy a memorial advantage. Photos may confer reality status and thus lend credibility or urgency if you don't act now, then, or to otherwise vague or unbelievable arguments. Let us now have a look at a typical humanitarian campaign advertisement of UNICEF.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot.
People are thought to more likely aid physically close victims. Like Aristotle said, distance has been tied to compassion. For Aristotle, what mattered was proximity, be it geographical, so within a physical reach, be it age, character, habits, or familiar. You pity those who you know. And more recently, Peter Singer has claimed that there's no moral difference whether the person he helps is the neighbor's child or a nameless Indian child 10,000 miles distant. But as we have established throughout classes, is that what people should do is not what we do in reality. So we all need to draw a line somewhere. Even Singer freely admits to not doing all he could do. So drawing a line means that there's clearly some difference between the neighbor's child and the distant starving stranger in India. And this is a source of difficulty for the aid agencies, because the humanitarian subject is more likely than not to not be the neighbor's child. So they have to try to bridge the distance by advertising. And by advertising, they bring the distant victim to the donor's public doorsteps. Humanitarian organizations therefore make conscious efforts to engage technologies of imagery to bridge the distance and attract support. Images, however, create problems. So even as they raise awareness and replenish the funds of aid organizations, or at least attempt to do so, they raise acute ethical questions. The image, like any other form of communication, necessarily excludes actors and truths while also concealing and portraying a particular point of view. So the image producers and the distributors wield the power of social construction over who or that which is represented, and also how it is represented. So this power to define the real, or in their eyes, the reality, to construct the mental frames through which we as a public view these distant events, is derived in part from the aid agency's moral and expert authorities. However, this power is not total. Images can take on a life of their own after their publication, and this can lead to further complications. The video we just watched, it sells humanitarianisms in way. It shows the pictures of the victims, but these victims have been selectively handpicked, and this raises an ethical issue. Pictures of victims, there is a potential benefit to it in that they mediate distance. They confront people with uncomfortable facts, and it also helps to bankroll intervention. However, at the same time, these images have powerful side effects. They sell suffering in a potentially ethical, questionable way, and they perpetuate a humanitarian narrative in which Western aid organizations are empowered to act on and for the helpless victims. So we would be interested to know your thoughts on the subject matter.
Our group feels that it is. Basically, the reason for that is that it promotes a well-being in ourselves. There are many virtues that we might often not look at, and this sort of advertisement highlights and tells us that these virtues are important in general and encourages us to be a better person, and this will be better for the general community and as society. So our group would think that even though some issues regarding it, like using those appeals, like emotional appeals to get objective, might be not that ethical to some people, but in general, overall, it promotes the good in human, and we think that that would be ethical.
Children aged between 2 years old to 11 years old spend an average about 22 hours of TV time per week, and every year they are exposed to more than 30,000 commercials. Out of all commercials targeting children, 80% of which are toys, cereals, candies, and fast food restaurants. So today, let's talk about advertising to children. So what's the biggest controversial when we talk about advertising to children? Why is it different as compared to advertising to anybody else? Well, some people argue that children are too vulnerable mentally to be manipulated through this advertising message. In this case, they are prone to accept whatever stated in the advertisements are true and unbiased. They lack the ability to differentiate programs, commercials, and real life. So these advertisements are believed to have huge impact to their cognitive and emotional development. So depending on what the content of the advertisement, if it is something not very appropriate, these kids are exposed to high risk of distorted perspective and values because they can't see through the true motive of the advertisement. Now, let us take a look at how the brand Moschino did it.
Moschino Barbie.
She's the most Moschino Barbie ever!
Totally hot, totally cool, totally
Moschino Barbie! So fierce!
Look at those shoes that felt her hair, covered in gold with Moschino hair.
I love you, Moschino Barbie!
She's a girl who has it all. Nothing can stop her. Please hold while she takes this call.
It's for you, Moschino Barbie!
Moschino Barbie doll fabulosity totally included.
Isn't that cool? So clearly from this advertisement, it seems that they are trying to encourage child to associate status and self-worth with materialism and to only look at the external things such as fame and wealth. According to Susan Lin, the founder of Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood, that because of advertising, children have convinced themselves that if they do not purchase something that is the latest and the most trendy product, they are inferior as compared to the others. And also in this advertisement, the brand name Moschino was repeated so many times, or better still, the name of the doll is called a Moschino Barbie. So we can imply that actually Moschino didn't really care about the doll because they just want the children to remember the brand name from this repeating word. As a consequence, as they grow up, they foster high desire of a particular brand. For example, in this case, Moschino. Now let us take a break and we will be back after the advertisement.
Subway Fresh Fit for Kids meal bags are turning inside out. Just like Riley finds joy.
Hang on, Riley, here we come.
Team happy. You can find joy too when you go to Subway and get a Subway Fresh Fit for Kids meal, where you'll get an inside out messenger style meal bag with either a memory game or an emotion cube. At Subway, you can experience the joy of making choices that are better for you.
Think positive.
And catch Disney Pixar's Inside Out in theaters in 3D June 19th. Rated PG.
Michelle Obama launched a campaign against childhood obesity, and this advertisement from Subway is intended to promote a healthy eating program at children. So right away after this series of commercials are launched, concerns are raised on whether is it ethical to market directly to children, because the Subway commercial, for instance, is training kids to choose food based on celebrities, in this case, Inside Out characters, instead of its real value. But anyway, Subway is still considered as a fast food chain, and what's on the menu is far from healthy. So when they claim that they are a healthier choice, yes, with that tagline, eat fresh, some people may have the perception that it is relatively healthier among other fast food restaurants. But according to the researchers from UCLA, Subway is actually as unhealthy as McDonald's. So by having such misleading campaigns, it not only distorts these children mentally, it also cause physical issues such as obesity. So when marketers target children directly, from a parent's point of view, these pastel powers are really unfair indirect advertising for them to make a child-influenced purchase. However, from the business operator's point of view, specifically child product companies, if they do not target children, who should they target then? After all, their business have to run. So class, do you think that it is right for businesses to target their advertisement directly to children? We would love to hear from you.
Marketing to children and advertising to children, is it ethical? It will be useful for us to look at our frameworks again to discuss this question. According to Kantian theory, companies should be motivated by goodwill. Most companies begin their marketing technique to children out of self-interest to maximize profit. They want to build brand loyalty in children from young. In this case, most marketing and advertisement to children lack the element of goodwill. So we will conclude for Kantian theory that marketing to children is inherently unethical. When we look at utilitarian, we have a different side of the story. Utilitarian might think that this is ethical because all stakeholders can be happy considering the situation. When advertising to children are happy with their toy or food. Parents are willing to listen to their children because they wish that children will be happy to be entertained, and they will be happy if their children is happy. And not only the family benefits, corporations will have higher profit and employees have higher job security, and this will mean that everyone is overall being happy with this. But there are other situations that you have to consider. There are also parents who are unable or refuse to buy products that the children desires resulting from the exposure to the advertisement. Take for example what was mentioned earlier, a Moschino Barbie costing £100. Certainly not all parents can afford this purchase. So what would the children feel if they feel they want this product but they cannot get it? Will they be depressed or disheartened? And the frustration that the parents have when they cannot satisfy the desires of the children when certain products cannot be purchased. And next we'll look at the most might be the most effective way of our group feels that talks about this marketing to children address this issue, which will be from Aristotle's point of view, the virtue ethics. Virtue ethics states that one should express good. In this example of Moschino Barbie, they are being praised for breaking the gender stereotype that only girls can play with Barbie. But the main concern our group has about this advertisement is that Moschino Barbie is related to the power of the media to shape a child's perspective, to develop materialistic values. The Barbie itself costs £100. If you think of that's all, that's not all. There are life-size Barbie clothes that are sold by the company as well. The price range for this line is $220 for a t-shirt and $1,595 for the leather shoulder bag. And research has shown that children with more materialistic values are also less likely to develop virtues like courage, temperance, and modesty. When marketing to children, firms have to be very cautious about negative value they can instill in the children. And when our group look at this using our ethical concepts that we feel that is very important, what makes us feel that it's unethical is the well-being of children. By instilling these negative values, by making them the social impact of these advertisement to the children might be huge, and we think that generally advertising to children might be unethical.
Do marketers bear the main responsibility of ensuring that their marketing practices and content is morally right? Given the scope of marketing, marketers should definitely not be the only ones who should bear the responsibility of marketing ethics, given their expertise in a corporate firm, which is to promote and to expose the company's product. Therefore, our group feels that there is a shared responsibility among different parties to make marketing ethics work. In the diagram as seen in the slide, consumers are given the option to decide what they would want to purchase, and therefore they should take responsibility on the decisions that they make based on the information that is available to them. Marketers should provide honest and adequate information only and not deceive their consumers. Meanwhile, legislations have to be enforced to deter unethical practices and keep marketing practices in check. The general public, such as you and me, can also use social pressure to raise issues and speak up for ethical marketing. As discussed previously, marketing can have a negative influence on children, as children may be incapable of making decisions due to the lack of perception and maturity. Parents would then make the purchase decisions for them, taking in consideration the exposure of marketing to vulnerable audiences like children. Marketers would need to take extra care to the content of their advertisement, and legislators will also have to enforce stricter regulations in this front. To conclude, there is definitely pros and cons to the impact of marketing. Marketing can bring about creation of jobs, promote creativity, and spread information. However, in doing so, it seems inevitable that marketing increases materialism and amplifies social divide. Towards children who may not have the best perception of information, the negative impact on them may be further amplified. Quoted from Leo Burnett, who has defended marketing in Marketing Ethics, we cannot deny the fact that marketing is an essential tool in the world and has pushed forward development through its positive impact. Not all marketing can be manipulative and unethical. As long as we constantly move forward in the discussion of marketing ethics and enforce legislations, unethical marketing practices can be deterred. This comes to the end of our presentation. We look forward in continuing the discussion on marketing ethics in the discussion board below.